In this highly informative nootropics video, we're going to talk about the methodology and the logic and basically instructional protocols on how to formulate a stack that works really, really well for you that you might have to take semi-regularly in school. It's your job to get brain performance for X task. Really how to think about formulating that kind of stack. Coming up. Okay, a minute and a half of very powerful nootropic product promotion. Number one, we've got a stack that we applied some of the principles we're going to talk about here called Cortex. It's a very powerful stack used by day traders, corporate people, entrepreneurs, folks that give speeches for a living. It's a very powerful verbal fluency stack, very powerful mental energy, speed of processing, drive you to action, productivity stack. It's literally called, the generation one of Cortex is called Workhorse. It is a productivity nootropic stack, very powerful drive you to action stack. Get it at livecortex.com. Secondly, we wrote 2 digital guides that basically teach you how to use nootropics, and they give you pro nootropic stacks. They're good for if you're brand new, and they're good for if you're 10 years into taking nootropics. I mean, they're very powerful. One of them's called the Racetam God Guide, 80 plus Racetam stacks, guys. 80 plus pro Racetam stacks, plus a breakdown of each Racetam. The other one's called Smarter, Better, Faster, endless amounts of stacks. Modafinil stacks teaches about modafinil, teaches about choline sources, teaches about Alcar, teaches about stacking. Racetams with Alcar teaches about research mechanisms, teaches about phenibut, teaches you about everything else in between. Get it at livecortex.com. Those are digital, so you can just download them, read the wide array, and have access to the pro nootropic stacks in them. Lastly, we do stack consulting. You need us to help you formulate your own stack, give you advice on stacks, answer questions about nootropics, help formulate a particular stack that works well to improve your flexibility, improve your speed of processing, improve your motivation. It's 40 minutes with me over a video chat and 15 additional email correspondences. Get all that stuff at livecortex.com. Okay, so let's talk about the methodology and the logic behind formulating a stack. And by formulating a stack, I mean you creating a stack of a Racetam, a choline source, some B vitamins, some supporting nutrients, maybe some caffeine, some theanine, just an all-around well-balanced stack that you're going to take through your freshman year in college, or through your time in med school, or at work every day. So that you can get yourself in a place where you can function really good. It's basically finding the right stack for you. How to create a stack. When folks go and try to approach creating their own stacks, I don't really think there's no guidelines on using a methodology, basically an order and a way to think about how to formulate the stack. So we're going to break that down for you. Number one, this is how you think about formulating a stack. Number one, you find a base. Okay, you don't build windows until you build a foundation. For most good stacks, what you really want to do, what I found over the years, is you want to just have one compound that acts as a strong base. That base is the largely influential compound. So if it's a Racetam base, you'll have something like oxyracetam. Oxyracetam is a base. That you'll take in a large milligram quantity, 1,000 milligrams or whatever the dose is for you. And that's the primary influential part of the stack. Okay, that's what we call the base. The second thing is supporting cofactors. So after you've got your oxyracetam or your base, Nupep could be your base, Aniracetam could be your base, Uniforam could be your base. There's all these different things that could be your base. Modafinil could be your base. Then you look at supporting cofactors. That's number 2, supporting cofactors. Supporting cofactors for racetams would be choline sources. Supporting cofactors really act as semi or definitely necessary extra nutrients that the base will use better to do its job. With racetams, we know the famous choline condition, which is where the racetams start to facilitate or accelerate usage of acetylcholine in the brain, so that you need a choline source as a supporting cofactor to help that racetam to really fire within neurons and make it do its thing and exert its effects. Okay, so that's number 2. You find yourself a supporting cofactor with the main base. It's not always the case that you're going to find a supporting cofactor. Some compounds can be taken by themselves. But if you look into it enough and you research enough and you're in the game long enough, most stacks really should have a supporting cofactor, and most stacks do have good synergizing supporting cofactors. Number three, and by the way, once we sum all this up, I'm going to give you a good example of all of these, like an actual stack that explains all this stuff. Number 3 are additional complementary synergizing nootropics. Synergizing complementary nootropics. Okay, that's number 3. So basically, that might be it's in philosophy, it is a compound that synergizes with the base. It's not the most influential part of the stack. It's taken largely in lower doses, but it adds a harmony. It harmonizes and adds some sort of additional effect of mental functionality with the main base of the nootropic compound. And then number 4 is a balancer. Okay, number 4, this is how you think about formulating a stack. Number 4 is a balancer. It's not always necessary to have a balancer. It really all depends on the situation, but I have to include it because sometimes it is necessary. A good example of a balancer would be the amino acid L-theanine. Balances, because it's calming, stimulation from other very stimulatory compounds. The famous example would be caffeine and theanine. Okay, so that's the basic breakdown. Number 1, you got a base. Number 2, you have supporting cofactors. Number 3, you have synergizing complementary nootropics. And number 4, you have balancers. So here would be a good example of that. That's how you think about formulating a stack. 1,000 milligrams oxiracetam is your base, the major influential nootropic. Supporting cofactor would be a choline source, okay? This is not the main base, but it supports the action of the base. And that's because oxiracetam accelerates the usage of a chemical that choline sources will end up making called acetylcholine, right? So you've got 1,000 milligrams oxiracetam, 300 milligrams choline bitartrate. Okay, this is your stack. You've got 2 things in the stack. You've got your base, and then you've got your choline bitartrate, which is your supporting cofactor. Now they're together. And then number 3, you have a synergizing additional complementary compound. So looking at oxiracetam and looking at a choline source, what synergizes with the both of them that isn't a main primary base, main influential part of the stack, but that does add a nice, good complementary synergy? One example would be the compound theacrine. Theacrine would be a good example of a nice complementary synergistic component to add to oxiracetam. I found this to act very well together. That synergizing complementary compound is taken in lower doses. So in this case, the dose range on theacrine is really 25 to 200 milligrams. So you probably want to shoot for, let's stop it right at 40 milligrams. Okay, 40 milligrams of theacrine. So you've got oxiracetam, your base, your supporting cofactor, your choline bitartrate, and then you have a synergizing, now we're on 3, you have a synergizing complementary nootropic, and that is theacrine. It's not like adding a major influential, super powerful, overstimulating effect. It's just a stimulating, synergizing complementary nootropic. And then you have a balancer. Now, again, a balancer isn't always necessary, but I'm going to put a balancer in this stack, just because we want to, have a good example that has a balancer in it. A balancer in this case might be something like St. John's wort. St. John's wort is, is a calming, sort of mood-lifting kind of compound. Some consider it a nootropic. I absolutely do, because it makes my gut really relaxed. I think there's some work on GABA receptors, possibly some work on serotonin that St. John's wort adds to the situation. But it's a good, it actually works in synergy with theacrine and oxiracetam and choline bitartrate. This is like one of the stacks that I take. I never really talk about it, but it's just because I have 1,000 of them. It's one stack that I rotate between from all the different stacks that I've got. So you got this good calming balancer that synergizes really well with theacrine and then a choline source and then oxiracetam. Okay, so that's essentially how you want to look at formulating your own stack. This does not mean that that's the only way you could approach formulating a stack. You could approach formulating your own stack in ways that work for you, whatever. I've just found that over the years, it really does make more sense, and I really end up with a more sustainable stack that I can take for longer periods without side effects. Because if you don't balance your stack, you're going to get side effects. Too much stimulation of a neurotransmitter, too much stimulation of the brain in one way or another, not enough supporting cofactors, right? You see where I'm trying to go with this? Sustainability. Folks are always like, I want to take the stack every day, but it's starting to give me side effects, or it's starting not to work well, or it's starting to make me a little overstimulated. Do I need to take a break? Yeah, you should, but largely your methodology on how to formulate each component in your stack doesn't have a definitive stance. There's no methodology behind it, okay? And so what I found is if you really want to have a stack be sustainable, you have to approach it in this way, with the base a supporting cofactor, synergizing complementary nootropics, and then a balancer. That's how I think about it. That's a great way to think about it, and I hope that you can apply the strategy and actually get some good sustainable stacks from it. Thanks for watching.